Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1053, 1053, Monday, February 24th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, let's get on with the news of the day, and then of course we'll get on to announcing the dumbass of the week. Okay, well now it looks like it's official. Phil Haney's death appears to be self-inflicted gunshot wound. The investigation is still active and ongoing, and they are now confirming a firearm was found next to the body. So, I noticed that this is not getting hardly any coverage on a lot of the mainstream media networks. Not really saying too much about it. But I'm sure that there will be people asking some questions about this. And I was really surprised to see a tweet from Republican Congressman Steve King from New York saying that, quote, Haney didn't kill himself. Haney didn't kill himself. He was supplying, compiling incriminating data on Obama officials. Now, apparently Steve King is a friend and has worked with, in some capacity, Phil Haney, knows him. And it's very interesting that he says that essentially, he's saying that Phil Haney has essentially got an insurance policy. And his insurance policy is this evidence that he's been compiling, incriminating evidence on Obama administration officials. Now, if he's got this insurance policy, then possibly Steve King or someone else knows where this data is. And if you are that person and you are holding that data, or you know about it or know where to get it, the best thing you can do right now is get it out. Get it out. Because if the people who put down Haney know that this data is in the hands of or can be accessed by another party, they're going to be trying to figure out who that is. Because my guess is after they took care of Haney, they probably went to wherever they thought this data was and got their hands on it. Got the hard drive, got the physical copies, whatever it is that they were looking for. But if they find out that someone else may have access to it or may have hard copies of it, they'll be looking for that too. Because I would say there's a very good chance that his death is connected to this incriminating information that he's been compiling on former Obama administration officials. That's what it looks like to me. People don't just kill themselves for no reason. And as we heard yesterday, people close to him who know him are saying there's no way this guy killed himself. He was happy. Things were going well. He was excited about this new mission he had just been put on. He's been working on this, compiling this data. He's about to get married. He's happy as he's ever been. There's no reasonable explanation why he would commit suicide. Healthy, happy people don't just kill themselves. And there's no suicide note, as far as we know, and that's pretty rare. No message to his family, his friends, nothing. Just everything about this looks shady. And so I think that this story is probably going to stay out there. There'll be a lot of people asking questions, but it is kind of strange how it's not really getting much play in the media. I think there was a brief segment done on it this morning on Fox and Friends on Sunday morning, but really it should be a much bigger story than it is. And it reminds me a lot of the Seth Rich story. You know, they just kept the story to, oh, well, Seth Rich was murdered. In this case, just Phil Haney appears to have been killed, or maybe a suicide or something like that. And then it stops there. You know, there's no digging to anything beyond that. And that's when I always become suspicious. And you should be too. So we'll continue to follow this story. But at this time, about 24 hours after it first was reported, the sheriff's department there is saying that Phil Haney's death appears to be self-inflicted gunshot wound. Interesting term there, appears to be. self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, it shouldn't be too hard to tell. Shouldn't be too hard to tell. Because if he shot himself in the chest, that means he had to go like this, or put his thumb on the trigger like this. Either way, there's absolutely going to be powder burns on his hands. It shouldn't take long to figure this out. Are there powder burns on his hands or not? If this happened outdoors, are there any footprints? Is there any evidence that someone else would have been around? I'm sure they've got his vehicle. Was there any other fingerprints on the car? I mean, there's a lot that needs to be looked at here, and I certainly hope we get a thorough investigation and not a cover-up. And we'll be able to figure that out here real soon. You can always tell, because when officials start being questioned after a couple weeks, when they've been able to do an autopsy and gather evidence, and then they either come out and have a press conference or what have you, you can tell by the way they're either giving you information or covering up information. Then, if they try to keep it quiet and reporters start calling and asking questions, if they're getting hung up on or they're getting told, oh, we can't comment on it, oh, this is a federal case, or this involves national security, then you know you're dealing with a cover-up. So it's not going to take us long. Here in about a week or two, we'll know what's going on here. But you know, we see how the cover-up was done in the Epstein case. Here we still have this woman, this Ghislaine Maxwell. She's free as a bird. I mean, she was the man's pimp for all these years. She knows everything, everything. And they don't seem to have much interest in talking to her. Are you telling me that the federal government, the United States, couldn't find her if they wanted to? Are you telling me that the government in the UK doesn't know where she is and could assist in that? Come on, man. Dirty, 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 man. The swamp is very, very deep and very corrupt. And we'll keep watching this story, but it looks like everything else that we usually see. Well, there are now calls for Chris Matthews to resign over his Nazi invasion comment. Yeah, I figure there will be calls for Matthews to resign over a comment like that. If someone, a conservative commentator, would have said that comment, they would already be gone. That would already be a done deal. But Chris Matthews is a liberal, and so he will get a free pass. And the most that he will have to do is come out and apologize. That's all. He'll be fine. Don't worry about Chris Matthews. Next, we have this story that's coming out now. Blago has been doing quite a few interviews, Blagojevich, after Trump commuted his sentence. And now he's talking a lot about some of the things that we heard years ago when this all went down. Is a large part of why there was other charges involved, and there was some process crimes involved around the original charge. But the original thing that got him investigated and eventually led to his going to jail was the fact that he supposedly was trying to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat. Barack Obama was holding the Senate seat for Illinois when he ran for president and then won, which opened up that Senate seat. Blagojevich, of course, was a state official there in Illinois who would have had a lot to say or something to say about who might fill that Senate seat. And that's where all this began. So now we have Blagojevich going out on various media outlets and saying that, quote, Obama began the conversation about the vacant Senate seat. And in fact, on the very night that he was elected, Obama sent a middleman to talk to Blagojevich about filling that Senate seat and how they could use various forms of what's known as political horse trading to get various things that they want in exchange for that Senate seat. So now he's kind of dragging Obama into what he calls a political case, a case that was really about politics and not about breaking a law. He says, hey, that kind of horse trading is done every day. It's nothing unusual. It's just that, you know, I crossed the wrong people and politically I got hung out to dry, and Obama allowed me to hang out to dry. And of course he couldn't step in because he had been involved in the original game to do the horse trade by sending someone over to talk to Blagojevich on the very night that he was elected. So we will see if this story has any legs. It certainly won't go anywhere in the left wing. In fact, I saw him do an interview with Anderson Pooper over on the Commie News Network, and Pooper was just crushing him about being corrupt and everything else. And so you can tell they've got the long knives out for Blago on the liberal media outlets. He'll get fair treatment on Fox. He'll be able to go on some independent media places, which is where I suggest he should go. He should stay out of MSNBC and the Commie News Network and ABC and NBC. Those are not his friends. He'd be better off. Now, I know he's been in prison for 8 years, so he probably doesn't know how powerful the independent media is. But he might want to reevaluate how he's going to get this message out if he's chosen this path. Personally, if it were me and I were him, with the people we're dealing with, I'd probably keep my mouth shut, be happy I got commuted, and I would get on with my life. That's probably the smart move. But if he wants to dredge all this back up again, he should prepare himself, because they'll come after him again. He might end up like Mr. Haney. Well, we have Jason Johnson, who's a black man over at PMSNBC, saying, quote, racist liberals or racist liberal whites support Bernie. Racist liberal whites support Bernie. Now, who could get away with a comment like that? Well, if you're a black liberal, you can get away with a comment like that over on MSNBC. Now, if someone at Fox or me or Styx or HA or, Gorka or anybody else, Rush or anyone else said anything like that, oh man, you would be delisted, de-Googled. You'd be done, basically. But that's what he said. Racist liberal whites support Bernie. Clearly, very liberal whites support Bernie. Look at his audience. It's mostly young, white liberals. Very liberal. Socialists, commies. Whether or not they're racist or not, how do you evaluate that? I don't like this idea that everybody's just a racist. Unless someone's actually done something to do harm to someone of another race, and because of the race, that term shouldn't be used. But here it's just used, it's just thrown out there. And this man, this black commentator, can say that because he knows he's totally covered. He's black and he's liberal. So therefore, he can say racist liberal whites support Bernie. But that may give you some indication of which way they intend to go, or at least they're floating it out there to see if it gets any traction or to see how much pushback they get. I think that's a dangerous place to go. I don't think that's going to work. I think it will only enrage Bernie supporters and probably boomerang back on them. If I were just trying a technique to take out Bernie, I would try another one. Trump is tweeting out, very funny, the same thing I said yesterday. Trump tweeting out, will the deep state launch a counterintelligence operation on Commie Bernie? That's right. I mean, supposedly, when the intelligence community said that the Russians were trying to help Trump win, he got a full-scale counterintelligence operation. He got a 2-year Mueller investigation. Do you think they'll do that to Commie Bernie? That's what Trump's tweeting about. It's pretty funny. He's like, yeah, they should bring in Bob Mueller. I'm sure he'll get to the bottom of it. Oh, man, you got to love Trump. He thinks a lot like me, or maybe I think a lot like him. I'm not sure which. Well, here it comes. The demo commies in Congress who are running to hold on to their seats in Congress in 2020 are now being asked if they will support Bernie, if he is the nominee. And clearly, they've all been given their talking points because they're all saying the same thing pretty much. Even in these red states and purple states and things like that, they're saying, hey, we're going to support the Democratic nominee. So this is the line that they've been given. We will support the Democratic nominee. Now, that could mean one of two things. That could mean either the Democrat Party, Tom Perez and the elites who run the party, have decided that Bernie's support is overwhelming and they simply can't stop him and they have no choice but to back him. Or they've got another plan, and to have someone else be the Democratic nominee. And I think that they always have had. That would explain why they have the weak field that they knew could never challenge Trump. Because look at that crew that they got. They thought Bernie's got a 20-25% ceiling. Yeah, his base will come back. He'll raise a lot of money. He'll travel around on his Bernie commie tour. He'll do the whole Franken Bernie thing, and then it'll all fade away because he won't get enough votes. He won't get enough percentage. And then they're going to have this field of basically Klobuchar, Buttigieg, Crazy Joe, and the whole nine yards. None of them they knew would be able to really electrify a base enough to get a clear majority and win the nomination. It's almost like they put a really weak field out there on purpose. I wonder why. Maybe because, as everyone had been even talking about, even going back into spring in late winter, this past winter, and going into late winter, and now here we are at the end of the winter of, I'm trying to say that late 2019 and now early 2020. What we've been seeing is that there's been this sort of idea that, well, there's got to be someone else out there. There's someone else who's a Democrat who's going to pop in and they're going to come in and save the day, because none of these characters are presidential material. This seems to have been something that a lot of people identified quite a while back. And maybe it's because there was a plan, and there is a plan. And I think that that plan, as most of you know, is being engineered by the Right Reverend Clinton. She tried to do a grassroots draft Hillary, and that didn't catch on. But her people run the show. Those are all Hillary people, and they can write her in at the convention. Now, they've run into a more serious problem now, and they may be finally realizing that. They may be finally realizing that this weak field that they thought they had is weak, and but the thing they didn't count on is that Bernie's ceiling, turns out, isn't about 25. It turns out it's somewhere between 55 and 60. And that's enough to get so many delegates that even if he doesn't get enough to clinch it at the convention, it's so many more delegates than anybody else will have. It would be suicidal for them to take him out. So it may be coming to a reality to them that even attempting to come up with a compromise candidate is just simply not going to work, and that they may have no choice but to go with Bernie. That may be coming a reality to them, because that's what it's starting to look like to me. And now, even if the strategy was to have a brokered convention and then to have this big divide, and then say, okay, well, we need to find someone who can unite the party. We need to find a centrist, someone who can please these people, and then they roll out the Right Reverend Clinton, and then everybody comes out and endorses her. And of course, Bloomberg agrees the skids for her, and I have no doubt that Bloomberg is probably working in cahoots with the Right Reverend Clinton in this little deal that they're running. But at this point, that only works if Bernie's ceiling is below, say, 30, 35 tops. If Bernie's ceiling is, 50 to 55, maybe 60%, you can throw that out the window. Because even if Bernie doesn't get the votes, and then they have a second vote, and they bring in the superdelegates, and they bring in Hillary and write her in on the ticket, she would still lose. She would still lose. Even the superdelegates cannot force Hillary down our throats and defeat Bernie. Right now, it looks like to me he's unstoppable. Now, I realize we're going to get to some states that are going to tell us a lot more. South Carolina is probably the state. That's the state that usually clears the field. And it has a lot to do with the fact that you have an interesting dynamic in South Carolina, which is that just over 50% of the people who vote in South Carolina in the Democrat Party are blacks. And they describe themselves as being religious. The majority of them are religious and say they attend church weekly. So if the more than 50% of people in South Carolina who vote, Democrats who vote in Democratic primaries, are black, and they are mostly religious, it's a crazy dynamic, because here's your big number of black support, which is why everybody goes for it in South Carolina, because if you win the majority of the black vote in South Carolina, you win the state, you get the majority of delegates. But on the other hand, these are conservative, somewhat conservative, religious black Democrats, which means people like Buttigieg, and Bernie and people like that should not appeal to them very well. They kind of have to make a decision between their religion and their politics. And that's dicey. And no one knows which way that pendulum is going to swing. Well, we're going to find out here in South Carolina. That's why Biden still has a fighting chance. Bloomberg's not on the ballot. Bernie is a commie, and remember, he's an atheist. He is an atheist, and you can bet that someone in the field, in the Democratic field, is going to play that card. That's something we haven't heard yet, okay? Because religion hasn't been much in play in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. But religious beliefs in South Carolina will play a big role. And Bernie is a socialist and an atheist. So, but they say he's gaining support there. And that just shows you how weak the rest of the field is. So we'll have to watch and see if they play that card and how that goes. But these are some very interesting times for the Democratic Party. Lindsey Graham was on Maria Bartiromo on Sunday morning. He says that the hearings will begin this week. He says he will start with closed-door depositions. And once they get all the depositions, get everybody on the record of answering all the questions, then the hearings will move to open hearings, and then they'll call them in and grill them. That's what he's talking about now. We'll see if he follows through. Currently, he has 21 people on his list. He's going to call in everyone who had anything to do with Operation Crossfire Hurricane, as well as he's going to call in everybody who's signed off on the FISAs. We have Dick Morris. Also, now, I guess he's been watching my videos, because Dick Morris is now suggesting there may be a Clinton-Bloomberg plot to get Hillary written in at the brokered convention. Well, maybe you've been watching my videos, Dick, because that's what I've been saying now for quite a few weeks. I've been saying that there's some sort of a Bloomberg-Clinton plot going on here, that he's greasing the skids for her, that he wants to be like a kingmaker, that he has no interest in that job at all, not president or VP. He's greasing the skids for someone, and there's something going on there between he and Hillary. I can smell it. And, of course, the brokered convention is a strategy I've been talking about for several months. And, of course, I predicted that the Right Reverend Clinton would be the nominee, or would attempt to be the nominee, the day after she lost in 2016. Now, here's another thing. I'm watching some media coverage, and they're talking about Trump and blah, blah, blah. And I figured out why they hate Trump so much, and this is probably easy. It's a no-brainer, I think. The reason that they hate Trump so much, it's not for all the things that they talk about. They know the Russia stuff's a bullshit. They know Ukraine's bullshit. They know all these things they say are propaganda and bullshit. The reason why they hate Trump so much, in addition to the fact that he's appointing all these judges and could affect the Supreme Court greatly for the next 20, 30 years, it's because he's effective. He's successful, he's effective, and he's cutting into their base. He's actually doing good for the people who they rely on to fool every 4 years. That's why they hate him. He's effective. Now, two numbers that are terrifying for the Democratic Party after this Las Vegas caucus that you're not hearing anybody talk about, but believe me, they've got these numbers at the DNC, and they're probably freaking out looking at these numbers. These are the two numbers they're not talking about. They're giving you, yeah, Bernie won 46% and Joe got 19 and blah, blah, blah. And they're hashing all that out. But here's the two numbers that they don't want to talk about. First, keep in mind that in Nevada and in Iowa and in New Hampshire, turnout was low. That means lack of enthusiasm. Lack of enthusiasm, while Trump has record high enthusiasm. That's a problem. But here's a bigger problem, and here's the two numbers they're not talking about. In 2016, in the Nevada caucuses, 19% of Latinos turned out, and 13% of blacks turned out in the Nevada caucuses in 2016. But in this most recent caucus in 2020, only 17% of Latinos showed up to vote in Nevada's caucus or participate in the caucus. So 17, that's a 2-point drop with Latinos from 2020 to 2016 participating in the Nevada caucus, and only 10% of blacks in Nevada showed up to caucus in 2020 compared to 13%. So there you can see two different dynamics. Yes, not only is participation and turnout down for the Democrats indicating enthusiasm is not that high. But also, it's also showing you with these two numbers that it's not just enthusiasm. It's the fact that these people who are not showing up are not showing up because they don't want to caucus or vote for a Democrat. These people are going to vote for Trump. And I bet they're pretty enthusiastic about it. That's the numbers they don't want to talk about. Okay, we've got 9 minutes to go through Dumbass of the Week. I'll have to talk quickly, so listen fast. Yeah, I was really torn this week. I was kind of a split. I couldn't decide who I wanted more to vote for. It was kind of a toss-up for me between Bloomberg and Amy Jackson Berman. I really couldn't decide which is the bigger dumbass of the week. I was pretty much torn, so I just kind of split my vote between Amy Jackson Berman and Bloomberg. Okay, so Straight Arrow went with Amy Berman Jackson. Oregon Outback went with Berman Jackson. Larry Lyons. Judge Jackson, by the way, check out Larry Lyons. Click on his name, on his comments, go over and look at his channel and watch him perform some fantastic versions of some great songs as well as some of his own stuff. Truly talented, creative individual. Check out Larry Lyons. Leslie Klein. Mike Pompeo. Yep, Mike Pompeo. I was sorry to bring the news to you yesterday. I pretty much have, up to this point, pretty much liked Pompeo, but there's just too many things, and learning that he didn't provide William Binney's evidence, didn't even care to look at it, which could have prevented the coup, the Mueller coup. That's just too much for me. I wouldn't mind having him in the Senate, and I heard he might run for the Senate seat. I think he'd be strong in the Senate. I think he would vote probably 99% conservative. He'd vote well, but I don't want him around the president anymore. That's my personal opinion. Larry Rydell, Bloomberg, or Loonberg as I like to call him. Dennis Shaw, Berman Jackson. Ricky Ricardo, CDC, the Center for Disease Control. Arcane Blue, Chris Matthews. Remembrance Rug Guy, went with Blago. Hey, went with Mini Mike. No, actually, he went with Mini Mike's micro member. Mini Mike's micro member. I wouldn't know, but, I'll go with you on that. Hey, but I don't know anything about Mini Mike's micro member. And, of course, Mini Mike's micro member, and for needing so many NDAs. Because he tells bad jokes, apparently. Deep State Soup Sandwich went with Mini Mike, Barry O, and the Demo Commies. James Robinson went with YouTube for banning Rick Wiles. Freddie Schaffer went with Mr. Potato Head, Susan Rice, and Mini Mike. Susan Lowell went with the New York Bar Association for not rescinding the law licenses of Amy Berman Jackson and Andrew Wiseass. Joe Mack went with Frankenstein for being a commie. Mona Lisa went with Bloomberg / the Rotten Reverend Clinton, along with Amy Berman Jackson. Gregory Woolery went with Berman Jackson. Youngblood, the not-so-judicial Jackson, and Mini Mike. J.C. Hasty went with Mini Mike, his campaign staff, and then Biden. Jamie Anzavino, Judge Jackson, McCabe, and Mr. Potato Head. Jenny Tweets went with Mini Mike, Obama, and specifically Obama for taking credit for Trump's economy, which was knocked down within about one day. Jonathan Cassidy went with Berman Jackson, Bloomberg, and Mr. Potato Head. Andreas Manuela went with Rachel Mad Cow. Oh yeah, she's still on the Kool-Aid, brother. She is still on it. She's on Russiagate Hoax 3. Impeach My Ass went with Commie Boy Bernie Sanders. Jeanette Bateman went with Mini Mike, Berman Jackson, and Obama for the same reason. Dennis Waddell went with Mini Mike and Biden. Judith Vig went with Mini Mike. Linda Martin went with Obama, Judge Jackson, and Bloomberg. Thomas McKelvey went with Bloomberg, a.k.a. Willow Osgood. Sue Song went with the DNC, the mainstream media, and Commie Bernie. Douglas is going to go with the Burger King mold. Yeah, Judge Jackson, or anyone still on a cruise ship. Yeah, well, the people finally got off that cruise ship, but I agree with Douglas. I don't like cruise ships. Regina Pullman went with Mini Mike. Dr. Detroit went with the Bernie Bros, thinking that the DNC will play fair. Yeah, I don't know if the Bernie Bros believe they'll play fair. I think that they probably believe, like most people this time, that it's so overwhelming that if they try it, it could destroy the party, which, I don't know, which is the worst option. You put in Bernie, and he destroys the party, or you take Bernie out and you destroy the party anyway. I just don't see a win here. I don't see a win. Keith Fellows is going to go with Lundberg. Lori Holt will go with Judge Jackson, Mini Mike, and Barry Soetoro for the same reasons already mentioned. Judy Morey is going to go with the CDC. Chris Bacon will go with Bloomberg. None of Your Business will go with Mini Mike and leftist educators. Yes, leftist educators. I think in this Trump second term, I'm hoping he will really start to focus on what the hell is going on in our colleges and universities, because there are serious problems with the type of crap that's being jammed down the throats of young people in America today. I don't know. I have a pretty good idea what they are teaching them, and it's not that America's a great place, a great country, and that capitalism reigns. Nope, that's not what they're teaching. Michael was going to go with Mini Mike, Chris Matthews, and Berman Jackson. Jojo X will go with Snowden, Judge Jackson, and Commie Bernie. Yeehaw will go with Mini Mike and the rotten Reverend Clinton. And this whole thing about rotten Reverend being VP, that's, of course, yes, that's not, there's nothing going on there, I'm sure. It's already been knocked down by the Reverend. Sherman Lynn will go with Mini Mike. T.W. Wintex will go with Mini Mike and Pompeo. William Bigliani will go with Larry O'Donnell. Larry O'Donnell, he is pure nuts, and he's the guy, absolutely, that should be forced off the air. Or Trump should sue him, one of the two. Number 9, we'll go with Judge Jackson. Tiana will go with Judge Jackson, Larry O'Donnell, and Lundberg. Stage Door Johnny will go with Judge Jackson, Obama, and Mashed Potato Head. Mashed Potato Head, that's good. Mike G will go with Mini Mike, Judge Jackson, and Pelosi galore. Kimberly will go with Obama, Judge Jackson, and Eric Holder. Linda Thomas will go with Schiff and Pelosi galore. Bonnie Doon Homestead will go with anyone who considers themselves a Democrat or votes for one. TG will go with themselves for trusting Pompeo, and also Blago and Judge Jackson. American Pie will go with Mini Mike, Judge Jackson, and the mainstream media for pushing Russiagate Part 3. Madeline Kelsall will go with Loony Russiagators. Loony Russiagators, yes, that's what they are. Gene will go with Ian Brownlee. He's the guy who made the decision at the State Department to let those people come back to the U.S. who have the coronavirus. I've heard that pissed Trump off pretty much. Also Lawrence O'Donnell and Lundberg. Ronnie DeMasters will go with Judge Jackson and Mini Mike. Peter Swales will go with Mini Mike, and Mini Mike. And Meredith Mueller will go with Bloomberg. Well, there you go. So this week it looks like we had a very tight competition for first and second place. It was very, very close, but edging out by, it looks like, 5 votes. 5 votes. It looks like number 1 will be Michael Lundberg. For Dumbass of the Week, he takes first place with just 5 votes. Very few, but 5 votes over Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who finishes second. And Obama will come in third. Yes, he will get third place. Honorable mention this week for those comments he made about the fact trying to take credit for Trump's economy when anyone could knock that down. And I watched several different left-wingers try to spin that, and even they couldn't spin that.